On Christmas Day in 2008, my wife surprised me with a 1/48th scale Tamiya V-1 flying bomb, also known as the Fuselage V-103. It's a model I'd been eyeing for a while, simple in design yet packed with history. Now, what makes this kit stand out is its minimalism. With just 16 parts and a surprising 20 decals, it's one of the rare models where the decals outnumber the parts. That alone caught my attention and hinted at a quick and satisfying project, perfect for a relaxing build session. In this video, I'll take you through the process step by step, exploring the kit, sharing tips, and talking a bit about the fascinating history behind the V-1 flying bomb. Whether you're a seasoned modeler or just curious about this iconic piece of aviation history, stick around, you're in for a treat. Fast forward a few months to June 22nd, 2009, when I finally decided to open the box and put the V-1 flying bomb model together. At first glance, this kit seemed incredibly straightforward, with only 8 parts to assemble, but as most modelers know, even the simplest builds come with their challenges. Once I joined the two halves of the body, I quickly realized that the seams weren't sitting flush. What started as a quick assembly turned into about an hour of careful sanding to smooth out those seams. I spent more time sanding this model than it would have taken a real V1 to cross the English Channel. Now, let me address a couple of things you might notice in this photo. The air intake might look a little crooked. That's intentional. I've only placed it temporarily so I can airbrush it separately later on. Another detail you'll see is the yellow rod at the exhaust. That's just a temporary aid I added to make painting easier. One final adjustment I made was to cut off the spinner at the tip of the V1. It's a delicate piece, and I knew that if I left it on during handling, there was a good chance I'd accidentally break it off. I'll reattach it once the build is further along. Quick fact: the V-1 flying bomb, also known as the buzz bomb or doodlebug, was developed by Nazi Germany during World War II as a vengeance weapon, Vergeltungswaffe. It was the first successful cruise missile in history. 3 days later, it was time to break out the airbrush and get some paint on this model. I started with the belly of the V-1 using Tamiya XF-23 light blue. Now, the instructions actually called for Tamiya AS-5 Luftwaffe light blue, which is a premixed spray can. The problem? That spray can costs almost as much as the model itself. So, I went with XF-23 instead. It's a very close match, and I think it does the job perfectly. Over the next few weeks, I made steady progress on the V1, focusing on the upper half of the model. I started by carefully masking and painting the upper surfaces, which is always a satisfying but a time-consuming step. According to the instructions, Tamiya recommends using either AS-9 dark green or AS-3 Luftwaffe gray-green, both of which come as pre-mixed spray cans. However, instead of purchasing new costly spray paint, I decided to work with what I already had in my collection using a bottle of Tamiya XF65 Field Gray. It's a close enough match to the recommended colors, and it gave me the look I was aiming for. Once the paint had cured, I moved on to the decals, which really bring this model to life. Even though this kit only has 16 parts, it comes with 20 decals, a surprising ratio that adds a lot of detail to an otherwise minimalistic build. Carefully applying each decal took some patience, but seeing them settle into place was incredibly rewarding. With the painting and decals done, the V1 is really starting to look like a proper scale representation of this historical weapon. Quick fact: powered by a pulse jet engine, the V1 could reach speeds of up to 400 miles per hour, 640 kilometers per hour, faster than most Allied fighter aircraft at lower altitudes. By the 20th of September, I decided it was time to build a proper base for this German vengeance weapon. Instead of using the included dolly that came with the kit, I had a different vision. I wanted to depict the V1 soaring through the skies, giving it a more dynamic and realistic display. For the base, I thought a simple picture frame would work perfectly, providing a clean, professional look without too much fuss. To bring this idea to life, I turned to Adobe Photoshop. I started with a color photo of an English countryside, something reminiscent of the landscapes the V1 would have flown over during the war. But to give it an authentic, historical feel, I transformed it into a grainy, sepia-toned image, making it look like an actual photograph taken during the Second World War. Once I was happy with the result, I uploaded the image and placed an order at Walmart to get it printed, only costing a mere 19 cents, a very small price for what I hope will be the perfect backdrop for this model. Now, the only thing left to do is find a suitable picture frame that complements the V1. Quick fact, the V1 earned the nickname Buzz Bomb due to the loud buzzing sound of its pulse jet engine, which operated by igniting fuel 50 times per second. Here is a quick 5-second soundbite. Watch out as it is loud. On Halloween night, I tackled the final step of mounting the V1 to its base. For the stand, I used the plastic rod from a transparent paintbrush handle. Simple, resourceful, and just the right size. I carefully glued the rod to the underside of the V1 using crazy glue, tilting it at an angle to give the illusion of flight. Once the glue had dried, I attached the other end of the rod to the picture frame base. At this point, everything seemed to be going smoothly, until disaster struck. While I was adjusting the frame, the V1 suddenly snapped off the rod. Fortunately, unlike its real-life counterpart, my V1 didn't explode on impact. In fact, it survived the fall completely unscathed. Relieved, I glued it back a second time, determined to see it through. However, this time I faced a new challenge. With the rod firmly attached to the base and the model angled in flight, keeping the V1 steady while the glue dried turned into a balancing act. I had to get creative and bring out my trusty alligator clips and some large popsicle sticks to hold everything in place. It was a delicate operation, but after some patience and careful adjustments, the glue finally set and the V1 stood proudly in its soaring position. Quick fact, the V1's psychological impact on civilians was immense. The buzzing sound would suddenly stop when the engine ran out of fuel, signaling that the bomb was falling toward its target. By November 4th, it was time to remove the alligator clips I'd placed a few days earlier. Unfortunately, despite my best efforts to handle the model with extreme care, the movement proved too much, and the glue bond snapped yet again. At this point, I knew I needed a better, more permanent solution. After doing some research, I decided to try a different approach, drilling into the V1 itself and inserting the plastic rod directly into the body with a generous amount of crazy glue. It felt like a risky move. Drilling into a nicely finished model is always nerve-wracking, but I figured it was worth a shot. This time, I also decided to glue the V1 straight rather than at an angle. While the angled pose looked dynamic, I realized that the buzz bomb was historically designed to fly straight and level, thanks to its gyroscopes. This would not only be more accurate, but also simplify the mounting process. To my relief, the plan worked perfectly. The rod fit snugly into the drilled hole, the glue set firmly, and the model now feels sturdy and secure, no more wobbling or snapping off the base. Interestingly, during my research on forums and model building sites, I noticed there wasn't much consensus on how to mount aircraft models using acrylic or plastic rods. From my experience, drilling a hole and inserting the rod appears to be the most reliable method, even if it's a little nerve-wracking at first. Quick fact, the V-1's pulse jet engine technology influenced post-war aviation and was studied extensively by Allied engineers after World War II. 2 days later, on November 6, 2009, I put the finishing touches on the V1 scale model, marking another completed project under my belt. This build may have been simple in design, but it offered me an opportunity to experiment and grow as a modeler. For the first time, I tried spraying a clear coat, which gave the model a more polished and professional finish. I also learned valuable lessons about mounting a flying model on a stand, a process that involved a lot of trial and error, but ultimately turned out sturdy and reliable. In the end, this project wasn't just about building a kit, it was about improving my skills and gaining confidence with new techniques. From sanding tricky seams to balancing a delicate pose, each challenge taught me something I can carry into future builds. Clocking in at 7 hours and 11 minutes from start to finish, the Tamiya V-1 flying bomb proved to be a rewarding and educational experience. It's a reminder that even small, straightforward models can help us grow and leave us with a result we can truly be proud of. With this project now complete, I'm already looking forward to the next one, applying these new lessons and taking on even greater challenges. Thanks for joining me on this build, and until next time, keep on scale modeling.